Namaskar. This is my 38th lecture or 37th, depending on whether or not you consider that one little spoiled video one of the lectures. We can take it as a 38th lecture, 8th lecture. Now I'm getting into the very difficult, complex part of my lecture in feminist theory and Hindu genocide. I want to start with something, but this lecture will be very simplistic considering the complexity of the issue, which is why did Indian culture, I'll call it the dharmic culture, which will be inclusive of the Vedic dharma and all its traditions, including Tantra, Vaishnava, and so forth, the Buddhist tradition, the Hindu tradition, the Sikh tradition, and so forth, survived iconoclast, invasion, genocide, and so forth, whereas other cultures did not. Example, Africa, Islamic colonization and Christian colonization. South America, the Mayans, the Aztecs, the Incas, they didn't survive. And in order to give some reasons, we have to do vast research. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to stick to one thing, one point. Some important hypothesis that I have arrived at. My research is ongoing. So these are not set hypotheses. They are probable. And we can add more, we can think more, there can be more discussion around this. And maybe some of the hypotheses will change as I gather more empirical data. But from my research so far, I have reached some conclusions, and that's what my video is, this lecture is for today. The methodology that I'm going to use is comparison of African culture and Islamic colonization and the dharmic culture of the subcontinent. I'm not even using the word religion, I'm using the word culture. Compare these two and arrive at what are the similarities, what are the differences, then draw a conclusion. So my methodology is inductive analogical. It's more than fact gathering, because at this point that is easier, and later we'll go in bits into this. All right, so remember, it's very, very limited. Islamic invasion of the Indian subcontinent, starting from what was Afghanistan, Gandhara, and the dharmic culture which was in existence, and then the African indigenous culture and Islamic colonization. I'm not going into Christianity. And we'll do a little comparison. Now, first of all, let us look at some similarities. What are the similarities? There are several similarities. First of all, land before colonization, before industrial revolution rather, there was no such thing as exchange of land. Land was not a commodity. What is a commodity? Marx will tell you a commodity is that which has use and exchange value. I use this table to keep my laptop. That's its use value. It also has an exchange value, how much I paid, say $1,000 or so, to buy this laptop. It's circulation in the market. Now, land was not a commodity in that sense. One could not buy and sell land. It is the same in African indigenous as in the subcontinent. There were the first settlers, they were keepers, stewards of the land. And it was all sacred. Land was sacred, belonged to the divine, and it belonged to the chief or the monarch, the little monarch. We talked about the polis, the oikos, and how society was divided, etc. And he was just the steward, the chief, the chieftain. This is very similar. The other thing that's very similar is the question of ancestor worship. The preservation of the tradition, the ancestral tradition, which is true, which the keepers, the chiefs, the monarchs, the head of the community used to keep. It's one of their duties. Now, is that religion? Not in the Abrahamic sense, but yes, it's religion. So I'll read a little bit from a book, which is one of my books in research. It's this, The Legacy of Arab Islam in Africa, John Azuma, and I'm reading how religion used to be used in indigenous African communities. African language have no equivalent for the Western word religion, or indeed ritual, in order to consider the religions of Christianity and Islam. They have to start using an alien and imported word. Similarly, the practitioners, I'm using the word practitioners, of African traditional religions do not look upon their religious beliefs and practices as a distinct set of activities separated from economics. Everything is sacred. Other ones, nor are they defined as the religions of Aruba, Zulu, or Kamba people if they were national churches. An old traditionalist saying is that someone is asking, what is your faith? He will say, I'm Zulu. And then Azuma says that there's a Chinese proverb that says that if you want the definition of water, don't ask a fish because he's immersed in it. And the only definition of religion, it's undefinable. It's not a set of doctrine of beliefs and so forth. Now, in the dharmic tradition, it's very similar. Of course, we have a set of traditions and how to do stuff, etc. But it's very, what we call in philosophy, performative, through rituals. It's something you perform. It's very existential. And so, if someone says, I am a Hindu, that also encompasses their ethnicity and their entire identity. It's not just a faith in the Christian or Islamic sense. It's very similar to this. This is one part that's similar, apart from the ancestral worship. So, now we know the similarities. Let us look at the differences, why the dharmic cultures, again, I'm reluctant to use the word religion, cultures survived, but in Africa they did not. Now I'm reading from a book which is available on the internet. It's called The Great Calcutta Killing and Noakhali Genocide. The authors are Sinha and Dasgupta. It's very interesting. So what they're saying is this. When the Islamic invasion happened, they could not bring in anything in terms of an advanced stage of system of human development to the Hindu psyche, because there was already an existing civilization that was answering the metaphysical quest. Who am I? What happens after death? Is there a soul that survives the bodily death? Mandukya and all the Upanishads were answering this. It was the martial aspect that led the Turks, Afghans ascend to political paramountcy and to subsume a part of Hindu society to their faith. The human social development and learning tradition of India overwhelmed the invaders and dispirited martial capacity in the long run. The East India Company with advanced martial capacity arrived on the scene in India at the time by the mid-20th century. So that's the metaphysical part, why they didn't bring in anything that could surpass the metaphysical question. I'm not talking about economics. The metaphysical quest of the dharmic people, of the people of that culture. Now, that's not the only thing. What's interesting is there is an economic and social side to it. Let's go back to our base and superstructure of Marx, base, superstructure. And for Marx, the base, the modes of production, relations of production cause the superstructure. Now we are going to the modes of production and the economic system of the dharmic culture, which is also dharmic. It's not a Marxian, this is economics and this is culture. It's the same thing. Why the invaders, the Islamic invaders, could not really penetrate. And what is that? The Hindus remained predominant in the affairs of trade and commerce, management of land and land revenue and local self-governance. Zamindars, local chieftains were predominantly Hindus. Apart from this, powerful Hindu kingdom existed in the peripheral of the Muslim Sultanate since 13th and 18th century till the coming of the British. Islam could not convert more than 15% of the total people. Most of the Turks, Afghans that came in India as fortune seekers had little experience for the land and land management, nor had they trading affinity with experience. mostly army personnel and mercenaries, Turco-Afghan rulers settled in Delhi could not lay hold of the Indian economy that remained in the hands of the Hindus through its growth and seriously stifled because of the existence of the repressive, pillaging alien sultanate rule. So, they were not capable of that land management that required skills. What kind of skills? Here we come to two more differences between Africa and the dharmic religion. One is, I said in my previous lecture that the Muslims traders from Arabia and Persia came into Africa as traders and some peers. And they lived in separate communities called zongas because the indigenous chieftains, rulers won't let them in. And they traded. Many of them became healers, and also many of them were used in the courts of these indigenous rulers because they brought in the art of writing. Here is another difference between the dharmic religion, Indian subcontinent, and African. Another reason why they could not fully convert or conquer people. One is the metaphysical, I talked about it. One is the land and land management system. Now comes the art of healing. There's already an Atharva Veda. People were going there. Yes, some people, I'm sure they went to these new healers. We always try out new ways of medicine and so forth. That is true. And the other thing that is very important is the art of writing. They did not bring in the art of writing. It was already in existence. In fact, it's very interesting. Sanskrit, the court language in Kashmir, was like, there's a joke that even the dogs can speak Sanskrit. That's so highly advanced. So all these are very important reasons why they could not convert the totality of the dharmic religions. Of course, the population was huge. That's the other reason. We talked about it, the declining Hindu population. What do? The population was huge. So they couldn't convert everyone despite 650 years of rule. But these are also very important reasons. Now, one of the things that Sinha and Dasgupta says, which I do not agree with, is that these kings, Hindu kings, they put up a fight. And that is not very special to the Indian subcontinent. In Africa too, the indigenous kings, didn't let Islam penetrate very much. I'm reading again from this book. One ruler, Nafata, 1794-1801, literally imposed a ban on Hausa conversion to Islam, or rather a particular version of Islam as espoused by the preacher, the jihadist, Uthman Dan Fodio, 1817, and asked all male converts to revert back to their tradition of their fathers. Remember, ancestor worship tradition is very important both in Africa and in the dharmic religions. And Nafata viewed the wearing of turbans and veils, Fulani nomadic dresses, as a challenge to the system he represented and banned that use. So even that was banned because it was, again, these religions are performative, not like Christianity and Islam. So that's a way of doing it. These measures taken to safeguard the traditional Hausa way of life were in turn seen by Don Fodio as religious intolerance and persecution of the Muslims. So these authors, Sinha and Dasgupta, say that the existence of the powerful kingdoms also were responsible for non-conversion. That could be a reason, but it was also true in Africa. So I would point more to, my hypothesis would be more to that Islam could not bring in an advanced metaphysical quest, because there was already a written text answering this, debating this, and so forth. One. To the land and land management system, these were warrior tribes. They didn't know, so they had to depend on the Hindus who were very good at that. And mathematics was also there. It's very important. And the healers, the Ayurvedic system was there. And the fourth, which is writing, is very important, writing. Now we have two strains. One, a practical strain, the existential part, which we share with Africa, and one which we do not share. So all these are very important. The Africans didn't convert that easily. We do not know their history. I'm doing research on that. It took them a long time. Now we come to what we discussed earlier. So, jihad bin al-nafs, jihad of fighting against your own inclinations, which is very similar to Buddhism and Hinduism, fighting against your own bad thoughts, sanskaras, etc. Jihad al-qawl, we talked about this earlier, preaching of the tongue, and jihad bin al-saf, preaching of the sword. So when they did not convert, then happened the preaching of the sword. As I said, Uthman Don Fodio, that's what he tried. Because what is the ultimate thing? The ultimate thing is Bilad ab Ibn, that ultimately you cannot, as a Muslim, you cannot remain under non-Muslim. You have to establish the Darul Islam. So he was a mujahideen, it's not an avatar. An avatar comes in for dharma samstapana, in a defensive way. The mujahideen is to establish expansionist, colonial, because that's the ungoverned land and they come and govern it. It's not that there is some problem going on, adharma going on, and the avatar comes to rectify it. It's not defensive, it's expansionist. So these are the differences, and next I'm going to talk about why there's so much resistance against talking about Hindu genocide, especially from the Islamic side. For this lecture, that is all. Namaskar. Please subscribe, like, comment, donate if you can, so that we can go on providing therapy from Swaka, our organization. We can go on doing the work and providing more videos. Thank you.